As always, guys, we're going to stand. Please mute, and we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have citizens' comment. And in order of request, we will begin with Keely Nowasaki. Hi, Keely. The mic is yours.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Okay. Thank you for having me. As I said in the last meeting I spoke at, the goalposts continue to be moved. We are now looking at the end of February for a mask mandate to end, and this looks more like indefinite masking. I'm wondering who has young children here, because I have a child that is 6, and that is a young age to do this with. How can you agree to this? What are we doing here? When are we going to break away from this nonsense? And when are people going to live and stop pretending simple life activities are so dangerous? It is clear that this is about politics and money. In no way, shape, or form does Commissioner Riley have the right to mandate masks, yet this has been going on for months. A recommendation would be much more appropriate and allow parents to parent. A mask is a piece of medical equipment and continues to pretend that children can safely and appropriately wear masks. Masks do not stop transmission. Over the last few weeks, the CDC has admitted that cloth masks and surgical masks are doing nothing. And as far as people wearing N95s, they should be fit tested for them to work effectively. Does anyone wear a mask all day? I do. I have to wear it for work, and it's absolute torture. I come home with headaches and a sore throat every day. I think masking is bad policy. Parents are equipped to decide whether they want their kids to wear masks in school. As stated before, many people will likely choose to continue to wear them. DESE needs to show hard data about why this is necessary for kids and the specific conditions that will cause an end to this order. Not an end for vaccinated students, but for an end for all students, to show that we are equal. Vaccinated or not, this virus will move through the entire population, whether you are wearing a mask or not. I don't know why we're singling out the unvaccinated and vaccinated. You can no longer blame unvaccinated children or staff for passing this illness, as they have to follow closer restrictions and testing. Come into play the COVID dashboard. Last week, there were 51 out of 86 cases that were vaccinated. And this week so far, there are 81 out of 102 cases that are vaccinated. And I'll single out Lancaster. They have a town mask mandate, yet their numbers are the highest. All towns, cities, countries that have mask mandates have shown an increase in cases despite masking. Masks are creating measurable deterioration in our young children. A study recently came out demonstrating a 20-point IQ drop in the last 2 years. So anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts are all at the highest rate they've ever been for children. That is sad. My son should not wear a mask 8 hours a day for 5 days a week. My son should be able to sit with his peers during lunch and not be assigned a seat. My son should be able to work in groups. Everything that is happening is normalizing this nonsense, and it's not helping our children. This is putting a burden on our children that is unequivocally unnecessary. In regards to the testing, if you choose to test everyone, it's obvious that we'll find something. Cold weather, less outdoor play, less sun, and normally there is sickness in the winter. That's the season. If you're sick, you're sick. The fact that people need to go out and be tested to find out if they are sick is ridiculous, and it's a waste of testing. If you're not sick, you should be testing. You should be staying home. Why is the testing threshold so high? They're using 34 cycles, and that's a number that I received from Nurse Lisa. I got this number, and if you look at the WHO website, in 2020, the number stated that between 35 and 45 show completely meaningless results, showing false positives. So now we're having people test, creating more fear by showing possible false positives. A vaccinated child with no symptoms can go back to school, but an unvaccinated child with no symptoms has to keep testing. This is discriminatory. The PCR tests as of December 31st are no longer under emergency use authorization.
Keely, I'm just going to give you Keely, I'm sorry. I'm going to give you a 30-second warning if you don't mind.
Okay, I'll keep going. Majority of swabs are sterilized with ethylene oxide, known as a carcinogen per the CDC, FDA, and OSHA. Are we okay with sticking these swabs up people's noses, especially children, repetitively when they are known to be carcinogenic? The district should take a stand to this. We are small towns. This is not a city. It'd be different if Worcester was mandating this versus a small town. Our numbers are low. Transmission remains low in children, and we should start educating children and stop making this such an issue, because it's ruining schooling for a lot of young children. parents should have to give consent to this. If you have to give consent to testing, you should give consent to masking, because it's inappropriate for me to put something across my child's nose and mouth every day, 8 hours a day, and it's gone too far. If this goes the whole year, it's ridiculous. And that's all I have to say today. Thank you as always as letting me come. Thank you.
Thanks, Keely. Okay, everybody, we have one other community member here, Mallory Sidorchuk. Did I say that correctly?
Hi, Leah. Yeah, you did. Thank you.
Great. Welcome. Go right ahead.
Thank you for having me. I don't have like a prepared statement or anything. I'm kind of just here to voice some concerns that I know that I have and some other parents in our community are having. So I'm a mom of 3. I have 2 children at center school. One is 8 years old. One is 5. He's in kindergarten. My other's in 3rd grade. And I have a 15-month-old at home as well. I have pulled my kids from school since Christmas. They have not been back. And for many reasons. I understand that the school is stretched thin. However, I am concerned with what we are doing to protect our kids at school. Unlike Keely, I feel as though the mask mandate should stay and that it should not be removed for any reason. It seems like the school has a very just nonchalant attitude about, knowing that family members at home have COVID, yet sending our school to kids, whether they're vaccinated or not, and not testing our, vaccinated children that are close contacts. Mr. Downing, I know that you made, sort of a compromise by letting us know that if there's a positive case in our classroom that you would let us know, which is great. I totally approve of that. However, it doesn't cover the rest of the school. My kid's kindergarten teacher was out sick all week last week because of COVID, and her child was home. And not home, he went to school. And I don't know, this just seems like a really huge and dangerous risk to our entire school community. I feel like COVID is on the rise, this new variant is on the rise, and yet we are loosening the reins on, all of our protections to our kids. And I just want to know, what are we doing about this? This is very concerning to me, to the community. It just feels like the school kind of doesn't care. And that, and we were all really concerned about the email that you sent out before winter break. And I just, what are we doing to prevent, a huge outbreak at school? Because it feels like we're just not doing anything. And I just would like that addressed at some point, and to know that, as a community, here we are, we're crying out for help, especially those of us who have pulled our children. Thank you again. I won't take up any more time. And Leah, thank you for approving me at the last minute. Thank you very much.
No worries, Mallory. And Mallory, if before you jump off, I just want to let you know that citizens' comment is meant to be a one-way street, so nobody will be responding directly to you. But as always, you can email the committee if you have specific questions later on,
Sure,
if it's not addressed.
Sure, I totally understand that. I just wanted, it's more rhetorical, I guess, like in general, especially Mr. Downing, what are we doing? How are we fixing this? Please help us. We are scared. Please, this is dangerous. Help us. Thank you.
Thanks, Mallory. All right, guys. So we're going to move on to our next agenda item, and that is the consent agenda. And I just want to double check with the committee. Is it okay if we keep the meeting minutes together? Without objection, I will move forward with the consent agenda. All right. So Mike, if you would like to take the first motion.
I'm sorry,
Sure.
Leah.
Yeah. So,
These are the minutes for December 15th and January 5th. I'm sorry, I was not at that meeting on December 15th.
yes. I just wanted to remove our community member. So we can separate them.
I'm sorry.
No, do not apologize. Mike, do you think you can do that on the fly?
Yeah, just are we still calling it consent? It's still consent agenda?
Well, we will keep the consent agenda together for the 15th and the warrant of January 15th.
14th.
Hey, Leah, we can just, what happens typically at a town meeting is that a person can just ask something to be pulled out to
Yeah.
be discussed separately, and we can just,
Yeah,
if that's what you're doing, I'm sorry.
that, I think that's what Sharon just asked. So
Oh,
that's what we're
okay.
gonna do.
So we can still do the rest of the consent agenda.
Yeah, so if you just do the consent agenda for
Just
December
remove-
15th minutes
Remove December 15th.
and add the warrants, yeah.
Right. Okay, so I'll move to approve the consent agenda of January 12th, 2022, containing the meeting minutes of January 5th, 2022, and the warrants of January 14th, 2022.
Second,
Hold on. Mike, can you restate that before I take Rich's second?
Sure, I move to approve the consent agenda of January 12th, 2022, containing the meeting minutes of January 5th, 2022.
That's the one that has to come.
I think you
And
want to
what-
take December 15th, right, Sharon? Because we need to take the 5th out.
I was not at the meeting on December 15th.
Oh, Mike, you were right. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
So should I continue should I make the motion again?
Yeah.
Sure. I'll
And
move to-
actually, I'm going to interrupt you because I'm going to have to do it again. Alita, the motion that you sent to us says the warrants of January 14th, but I think the agenda says January 15th. Which warrants are they?
They're Fridays, 14th.
14th. Okay, very good. So Mike, take it away.
Sure. I'll move to approve the consent agenda of January 12th, 2022, containing the meeting minutes of January 5th, 2022, and the warrants of January 14th, 2022.
Rich, do I have a second?
second,
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the roll. I say yes. Mary,
Yes.
Sharon,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Rich,
yes.
Steve,
Abstain.
Mike,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Did I get everybody? The screen jumped.
Yes, you forgot me. But
Oh, I'm
yes.
sorry, Amy. So Amy says yes. Thank you. All right, so now we can move to accept the minutes that were taken out of the consent agenda. So Mike, would you like to do that?
Sure. I'll move to approve the meeting minutes of December 15th, 2021.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Steve. Discussion? All right, we'll take the roll. Mary,
Yes.
myself, yes. Sharon,
Abstain.
Karen,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Sean.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Now we'll move on to the superintendent's update. Turn it over to Kirk.
That. Good evening, everyone. Good to see everybody again. Few things to discuss in the superintendent's report tonight, and I think it would be fair to just, Madam Chair, hit them one at a time. I know we traditionally go through the report, but I think there may be some conversation warranted to each of the three topics. So the first topic is the COVID-19 update. To prepare for the return to school, I think it was pretty well publicized in the news, sort of the last minute effort that the commissioner and the governor were able to secure rapid antigen tests for faculty all across the state. So we scrambled to get that in our faculty members' hands. I picked up the box of our tests in Franklin Saturday before return. My wife and I divided the kits up, and on Sunday, all the administrators joined together and we distributed those tests to staff before the return to school. And they expressed their gratitudes and were happy. We were able to find a half dozen or so cases through that distribution. So those folks did not come to school the next day or actually that week based upon the guidelines. So it was successful in that way. Also but what we did learn over break is that our not just our faculty, but our community was very vigilant themselves and did a lot of self-testing. as you would see on the COVID data dashboard, all those numbers on the vacation week were self-reported cases. We didn't find any of those. It's just our community offering that to us because they had run into scenarios where there were positive cases brought forward. So in addition to providing our teachers with the rapid antigen tests to return, we distributed the K95 masks provided to us. So we have those masks at all of our schools, enough stock to last us up to approximately February vacation if we use them all, if people are tapping into those supplies. And we still have a large supply of child-sized medical masks for any students that may need them in school, and they're ready and offered, and so we have those to hand out. The COVID-19 safety program has continued. We picked up the ball right on Monday, and per my emails that have gone out to the community, you know that we have had a lot of cases, and it's been a lot of management of just trying to find our cases. And as I was coming home tonight and listening to some stories on National Public Radio, the fact of the matter is the Omicron variant is amongst us. It's amongst us in all of our community settings all across the country. And it's not as if we are going to stop it. We can't stop it. But what we can do is use these metrics, use these tests to identify them, to isolate and notify to the best of our abilities. And so that's where the weekly COVID safety checks comes into play. Some things we learned after the first week of this is that our highest participant town is the town of Stowe. And so we're going to make an adjustment starting next week. Dr. Boynton, you can confirm this or not for me, but we're going to switch the high school and the Stowe schools. So Stowe will begin having their COVID checks on Tuesday, and the high school will be having their safety checks on Thursday. That is going to help us deploy our personnel and do the follow-ups and the tracing and the notifications for our schools that have such high participation rates in a timely manner. Because what happens on Thursday is we get pressed up against the weekend. And if we don't get those results back by Friday afternoon, well, then we're in a situation where we're not even able to notify until later. I think it's important to note when we had our snow day last Friday, our nurses participated and worked with our nurse leader, Nurse Kolecki, to notify families of if they were in a positive pool, so they could do testing on their own over the weekend. Anyone that didn't get back to us, we tested again on Monday. So the variables on that are moving so quickly. Our nurses are responding admirably to the changing conditions of the day. So with that being said, we did experience that first week back an absentee rate of 15% throughout the week. I think our highest day was 15.9%. When I looked at our data today, our attendance data, we were at an 11% absentee rate. So since that time, the return rate to school has been increasing. So I found that to be encouraging. However, that as a standard metric of 11% over the course of a school year is not what we're aiming for. We're aiming for a 95% attendance or a 5% absentee rate. And so with that, I know some parents have brought forward some questions regarding remote and hybrid learning. In the state of Massachusetts, it is abundantly clear we cannot offer those options because in state statutes, that is only offered through TECA and Greenfield schools, which you actually enroll in those schools. We were able to provide that initially during the pandemic because the governor issued an emergency order that allowed, under the emergency order, they were able to circumvent the state statute. Once the emergency order was lifted, that option for remote learning was also gone as well. But I think it's important to note that we are dealing with a lot of factors. We are 2 years into this almost, and it's important for kids to be in school, and we're going to take the steps that we can to make school as safe as possible, knowing we're dealing with a variant that is like water seeping through the cracks in the floor. And so our testing measures help us find and identify those cases so our families can take the measures that they need to take, and we can take steps that we need to take when we feel it is the right move to make. So, and on a related note to that, the commissioner did extend the masking mandate to February 28th. I'll remind the committee that we did apply for that exception for our high school, and we're given that exception. And when the time comes and as things settle in, I think we'll revisit that topic because that is one arena, one area that we would have some local control to change. So I'll pause right there on the update to field any questions on that.
Would anybody like to pose a question around the COVID update?
Okay. So next I'll move into the administrator meeting. Last week had a meeting with the 3 town administrators so that we could set forth sort of some common expectations, some norms moving forward, particularly through the budget season that we're about to enter into. And so we are, as a committee, going to be having our budget workshop. And following that budget workshop, I will be sitting down with the town administrators to walk through that presentation with them as well, as an opportunity for us to just collaborate and combine our thinking in terms of what we're doing with our budget this season. I've also extended myself to the 3 members of the advisory and FinCom boards of the 3 towns to learn from them what are the types of things that and questions they've asked in the past, so that in preparation for our budgets we can be thinking about that. But I also want to talk to them about hosting a joint meeting between the 3 towns, the 3 FinComs / advisory for Bolton, to do one common presentation of the budget to all 3 of those boards at one time for our communities to also hear. I know, Madam Chair, later in the agenda, there's an item to talk about the revival of Tri-Town for annual budget awareness. And I think this pathway of using the advisory boards is a good pathway to go to host that conversation. Ultimately, in town meeting, the FinComs in Stowe and Lancaster advise town meeting in terms of their support or not support of the budget being put forward. In Bolton, it's the advisory board and the select board. Both of them in that case offer their recommendation on the budget. So I think that would be a good opportunity to host that joint meeting in an effort to educate the public and educate our FinComs on the budget that we're advancing forward. So I'll pause at that point and take any questions on the town administrator meetings.
Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, and finally, looking at the budget timeline, we know that on March 15th, according to the regional agreement, we need to, on or before March 15th, we need to present the budget. And so our school committee meeting scheduled on March 9th will be when you take a vote on the budget. So Madam Chair, I'm requesting that on March 2nd, we have a budget hearing so that we can formally present the budget to the committee that we would like to advance forward. And that would then give a week of time interval to then ultimately vote on the budget the next week. It is my recommendation, but I also think we should probably check with MASC as well to separate the budget hearing out from the school committee meeting deliberations, because the budget hearing is a presentation of a budget and a solicitation of questions. And if we design it in a way to close the hearing and then open up school committee meeting at that point after the budget, that offers the opportunity for deliberations of the committee if they chose to opine on any of the things that are presented in the budget. So I think those are some things that we can talk about, Madam Chair, and also get some guidance from MASC. And I know Attorney Gleason is gifted when it comes to the formalities of meetings. He can, I think, guide us along there as well. So if we're doing that, walking through this time, I would also request that we attend a budget workshop for Saturday, January 22nd, and where we will present the budget that we have it to date. But please understand, there are certain things that we don't know or will not have at that time. Like Chapter 78, for instance, won't be out till later in the month. We hope to get some transportation numbers in by then. But we just have to see how things are going in terms of the bidding process and what that's going to look like. But what we can do is show you the structure of what the asks are and where the gap is. And then you'll get to see how that gap shrinks between January 22nd and ultimately the budget hearing as revenue streams and expenditure adjustments are made through that process. So at the February 9th school committee meeting, I'll provide a budget update. Ms. Maroney and I will, in terms of where we are in the process that is different from January 22nd. And then I think I expressed the pieces in between about a meeting with our FinComs and advisories. So also on here, I included the annual town meeting dates. Bolton is on May 3rd. Lancaster and Stowe both have theirs on May 2nd. I pulled those off of their websites where they have those posted. And so with that, that includes my portion of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions there before we turn it over to Dr. McGuire for the teaching and learning.
Does anybody have any questions about the budget timeline that we're just being described? I think I see Steve's hand.
Yes, I don't see anywhere where you're dealing with the Budget and Warrant Committee on moving ahead on the budget. You're giving us any iterations at all. By now, we should actually have a first iteration of the budget. That's item number one. Item number two, this budget workshop, I've said it before and I'll say it again, is a waste of everybody's time because we really don't care what the asks are. That's your issue. And our issue is to be told, yes, we're going to be doing this. No, we're not going to be doing that. So once again, where is the budget committee in getting any of this information as we roll along during this period of time? You seem to be dealing primarily with the FinComs and the other people in the towns, and yet you've got your budget. You've got a budget committee in the district school committee, and we seem to be left out of this whole process.
Well, Mr. Rubenstein, if that's an invitation, I'm happy to accept it and would gleefully bring that budget and for the Budget and Warrant Committee as well. So we can just set up that date and time.
The next meeting of the Budget and Warrant Committee will be the Monday before the next school committee meeting. We'd like to have a presentation on the budget as it stands at that point in time.
Okay. I think I'm going to raise my hand here and just say a couple of things around the workshop. Steve, I think that you are possibly correct that the workshop is maybe not necessary in its current form, that we could perhaps build a better timeline, a budget timeline where it will become obsolete. I think what we decided is that, or I think that what Kirk had mentioned a couple of times ago is that let's keep it in place for now while he's trying to understand the grander scheme of things. And then maybe next year it will go away. But I just want to say really quickly, interject on your second point, that I actually am interested in the asks only because, for example, I know one year it was put before our committee that one particular school was requesting 2 additional counselors because they believed the need was there. I think that that's something that the community needs to know, even if it's not able to get into the budget. And so that was actually a powerful moment for me to understand what the schools actually believe they need, even if we have to decide later on that we can't fund all of it. But I'm just one person, so that's my opinion. Anybody else want to weigh in? Go ahead, Rich.
I'd like to, I understand member Rubenstein's point as well, and yours. I have to imagine that the original intent of that meeting was to deliberate in public about what the different departments were looking for. I kind of share Stephen's point that it's a little bit of much of into the weeds or how the sausage is made. I'm not sure the value, right? We pay the superintendent and all the different department members to, develop the budget. I share your interest too, Leah, but I'm not sure that the value is there.
Thanks, Rich. Anybody else want to weigh in or ask a question about the timeline, the meetings with the town leaders, etc.? Kirk, are you going to want us to make a motion to add those meetings, dates and times to our calendar?
So I guess what I would hope, certainly for the March 2nd date, and Madam Chair, I will operate according to the will of direction of the committee. If you feel the best way to move about that is to put that initial presentation into the Budget and Warrant Committee on Monday, January 24th, I'm happy to oblige that request if that is the request that's being made. And to your point, it is to put into the record how the school is putting the budget together, and certainly as it is recorded there for the community to see at large as well. It's part of an education process, and there's some important elements that I need to present in terms of also assessment calculations, historical enrollment, that are all important elements for our community to understand, because when we have to make tough decisions about what are the types of things that we're keeping in the budget, people have the formative understanding of why that is.
Does anybody else have any opinions about the hearing that would be followed by a school committee meeting on March 2nd so that we can move from that hearing into a deliberation session? Go ahead, Rich.
Presided over a hearing before. I've never known it to simply be a reading of whatever it is. The way I held hearings in the past on warrant articles is you read that warrant article and ask for feedback. Then you read the next warrant article and ask for feedback. So I guess it is more of a listening session for the school committee. But I guess we can adjourn and then the school committee can opine in public if that's the intent.
Yeah, I think it might be a little different from FinCom or select board. So I think the school committee has a little bit different rules. I will definitely reach out to Dorothy Presser for advice on that. But these are our options. If she tells us that the hearing can be deliberative, then we'll just do it there. But I'll check with her. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I remember the hearing last spring. And I would like to know, and if anybody remembers how many people did not show up. There was no one there from the community at the hearing last year.
I remember, yeah. I think there were actually about 2 people there, but the showing was very low. Yeah, thanks for that reminder, Steve. Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was been listening to this with great interest, and I just want a clarification. So the plan will be that we'll have our public hearing in regards to the budget. We will then close the public hearing and then immediately go into deliberations on the budget. Is that what I understand?
Yes.
Okay. The superintendent is very kind in characterizing me as the, guru of these things, but I do believe that what he is saying is absolutely correct. Most of the public hearings I've attended is you open the public hearing, you take the public input, you close the public hearing, and then immediately the body politic, usually a select board or what have you, goes right into deliberations among themselves and makes a determination on what was just before the public hearing. So I think the superintendent is spot on with this. But the one thing I'm remiss, and I didn't raise my hand earlier, talking about the workshop and what have you, relative to the merits of the workshop and whatever we do, I can only speak for myself and the people of my community in Lancaster that one of the things that we keep hearing year in and year out in our pleasant forays before our local FinCom is that what they're asking for every year is they want that budget earlier and earlier. And I understand that under the regional school agreement, we have until the 15th to, formally adopt a budget. But an issue came up last year, and they had said that, that we're always being compared to Minuteman in Lancaster, and Minuteman had their budget in a little bit earlier than us. I did inquire of the chair whether that had been approved. Says no, but I think that whatever we present, even if it's incomplete, there's an appreciation for it, at least in the town of Lancaster. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
So on our current trajectory, the assumption by me is that we will have the budget voted on March 9th, Kirk?
March 9th, yeah.
So we'll be a
That's the
little
last
early.
school committee meeting before the deadline.
And can you just reiterate, I think you said this, but could you reiterate why we wait as long as we do? Because there are good reasons for that, right?
Yeah, we wait as long as we do because oftentimes we don't have the revenue streams that we're anticipating until well into February or even later. So we need time to put all those things together. So it's a matter of getting all the pieces of the puzzle together in time.
Okay, so we'll do our best. Maybe March 9th will be good. Steve, I saw your golden hand up. Did you still want to say something, or is that a hangover? Okay, go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer my opinion that I also think it's important for the public to hear the asks and for school committee members, because I feel that it gives the numbers some important context and helps us as school committee members who are asked to vote on approving the budget some better understanding of how the budget is crafted to achieve the goals in our DIP. So, and I also kind of like to get into the weeds. So I feel like I wouldn't be able to make, I wouldn't feel comfortable voting on the budget without having, the workshop that presented, without attending that workshop with that information presented in the way that it is. And also, I do have a point of clarification here, because last year I recall other members of the school committee saying that the format of that workshop was different than in previous years. So I don't think that we, correct me if I'm wrong, but we didn't actually see department heads and building administrators giving presentations on their asks. We just, I think, but we still got, maybe we got a summarized version of that. And I thought that worked pretty well. So just to be clear, I thought that the process that we went through last year was helpful for me to understand how the budget was put together.
So perhaps somebody else would like to illuminate what we did last year versus the years before, but my recollection is that it was virtual. It was 2 hours shorter. So it was only 2 hours long only. And we only had the superintendent and central office staff present to present the budget, and it just went faster. So, yeah.
So Madam Chair, that is what we've been prepping for already. I've informed the principals that I don't intend to have them appear, so that we can handle those things in very large buckets and address them differently.
All right, so I'm going to go Mary, Rich, and then Steve. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, so this is slightly different topic, but it has to do with the timeline and the dates. And so I've been looking on the Bolton, Town of Bolton website to get the date of the town meeting, and I haven't been able to find it. Last year, it was May 3rd. This year, see, historically, the town meeting is 1 week before the election on a Monday. So I think, but I've been trying to verify this. So I think that Bolton aligns with both Stowe and Lancaster in
Right.
having its town meeting. But if somebody could just check that, this is something that's checkable. But because last year
I'm
was
checking on
May
it right
3rd.
now. I'm checking on
Good.
that.
Okay, good. All right, so that was
Thank
it
you.
for me.
Thanks, Mary. Go ahead, Rich.
Just quickly, yeah, I was going to say typically the annual town meetings are on the same night. They can be, so I'd be surprised they're in different nights. The other thing is, I totally understand the spirit of what Kirk is saying. What, you know, if we're not going to have all the inputs, having an incomplete budget, presenting an incomplete budget, just probably raises more questions. But I would say that, and I would actually defer to our regional agreement committee chair, Dr. McCarthy, but I believe it's codified into our agreement that we don't deliver the budget till mid-March or something like that anyway. And further, let me turn on my camera here. I didn't realize I did that. The reason Minuteman delivers their budget so early is, I believe, in their agreement, they have to deliver it 60 days or something before the first town meeting, and they have 8 different communities they have to serve. So that is the reason why Minuteman delivers so early, is they have 8 other communities. Our communities have a similar mandate in our regional agreement. It's just our annual town meetings are all in May, as opposed to some of the other towns, which are, say, in February or something. So I don't think, if you ask the Minuteman administrators, they think it's ideal presenting a budget in December, because it changes several times before they actually vote on it.
Thanks, Rich. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, 2 things. First of all, Superintendent Downing said that he had checked the website for Bolton, and it was on June 2nd. And he gave us the other dates of the other 2 towns, and they were a week later, probably. The issue with Lancaster, and we recommended this to Lancaster last year, that if they take the existing budget, add approximately 3%, and use that as a rough number on their calculations, they should be satisfied with that, because our budgets have not exceeded more than 3% increase in a year for the last 4 or 5 years, at least, that I've been involved in it. And to me, it seems like a request that if they want to bring it up to the regional agreement change committee, they can do that. But I don't believe, Dr. McCarthy, that has even been talked about at the regional agreement. And if it is, I stand corrected. But once again, I'm still waiting to see more of the budget and warrant committees action with the budget as it comes through in various iterations. And I will just say that.
Thanks, Steve. I think, Amy, is your hand up to speak?
Just to let you know that I did confirm that the meeting date for the town meeting for Bolton is Monday, May 2nd. And I think that the website may be showing May 3rd, 2021. But for 2022, it's always on a Monday, first Monday of May.
I think that's exactly what happened. It's going. It showed May 3rd, 2021.
Thanks, Amy.
Okay.
All right, Mary.
In regard to the regional agreement, we go with Mass General Law, and we haven't changed that in any way. So that, the March 15th date is the date that is there, and so there has not been discussion on changing that.
Thanks, Mary. Any other comments about the budget? All right, I think we can move on to teaching and learning.
Great. Dr. McGuire?
Thanks, everyone. Good evening. Just a few updates as they relate to content. We've been considerably busy in the teaching and learning department in several content areas, as well as planning for our professional development for the second half of the year. I wanted to give an update in specific content areas, specifically math, literacy, as well as history and social science. Just to give you an idea of where we are with our professional development and some of our curriculum piloting across the district, the elementary mathematics materials review process has been in process all year. It's in a field test phase right now, and we're evaluating a couple of new programs, one being Bridges in Mathematics. It's being field tested this January in 11 classrooms in our K-5 classrooms across the district. Those same teachers are field testing units from Illustrative Mathematics K-5, and that will take place in February and March. We're also holding a training day to be held in early February for our math teachers. This is all going to inform the curriculum that we do choose moving forward. These field testing teachers and administrators are recording their evidence. They're providing feedback and using consistent set of rating tools to determine the best curricular resources moving forward. Our current program is Envision Mathematics, and that is also being evaluated for grades 3 through 5 as well, using the same review process, tools, and rubrics that we're using across the district for our early learners. January in Mathematics is kicking off part 2 of our Building Thinking Classrooms and Mathematics book study program. Our participants are discussing and exploring teaching practices that create environments for students that are engaging deeply with mathematical practices. And we've also implemented Math Practice Mondays that are kicking off this month. The weekly series of Google Classroom posts are for teachers are centering on and unpacking 8 standards for mathematical practice, which are focusing on the way that students think about mathematical content rather than the content itself. And it allows them to show their thinking and how they come about and come up with their answers. These resources and teaching ideas are also being provided to all of our teachers. So a lot going on in mathematics as we are investigating resources moving forward for our coming years in mathematics under our current curriculum review cycle. In literacy, members of our ELK team, and that's our Early Literacy Language Committee, they've met twice this fall to review and align the literacy assessment schedule and guidelines for administering these assessments across the district for students. These grade level teams are exploring topics and developing their literacy workshop pedagogy, incorporating social emotional learning strategies into such things as read alouds. We're also supporting our English language learners as that population continues to grow and publishing student work. And then finally in literacy, where our building-based English language arts teams and grades in our middle schools, grades 6 through 8, are vertically aligning their reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills with the Math State frameworks. And this is also coming from the work that we did in early literacy K through 5 over the last several years, and that's now bleeding over into our middle schools. The end goal is to now vertically align the reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills across the district. And in history and social science, our 7th grade social studies teachers are developing and implementing new curriculum units to align with the new mass history and social science curriculum framework. As the grade 7 team continues to sequence from grade 6, teachers are shifting their focus from geography to studying the development of ancient and classical civilizations. Teachers are partnering and have partnered the past 2 years with Primary Source, which is a great professional development resource out of Watertown, Massachusetts, and we've been partnering them to learn content and implement standards for history and social science practices. And then finally, the high school history department is participating in a learning session also with Primary Source centered around critical conversations. The group is again partnering with them to examine curriculum with an equity focus, which is this year's theme, and students' interest in adding inclusive content to some of the department's courses. At our next meeting, I'll also update the committee on our civic action programs that are required under the new mass frameworks in grade 8 and at the high school. We've been piloting those the last couple of years and getting those in place. So we'll be getting some work examples for you, as well as the programs that we have in place in the district. And then finally, we're continuing to work on our March Day of Professional Learning for the district. We have sent out numerous calls for proposals to present. On that day, a preview of what is to come includes keynotes, workshops, presentations, and information sessions on integrating social emotional learning with academic instruction, culturally responsive pedagogy, safe and inclusive learning environments, and centering equity and social justice across the district. And I've also included there the pamphlet that we've sent out to outside workshop presenters, as well as internal workshop presenters, as we're continue to seek presenters for our March 18th Professional Development Day. But so far we have a wide variety of sessions and topics. So we're really looking forward to a fruitful day in March. And that's my update. Thank you, folks.
Thanks, Todd. It's terrific.
You're welcome.
Any comments or questions? And the Civic Action Project is a graduation requirement for current sophomores.
It is. It's under in grade 8. We have that in grade 8, and it is also a graduation requirement. There's some flexibility in terms of where that is offered at what grade level, because most all students take the same grade 11 history class. That's where we have been piloting it. But we also recognize that some students opt for a different level, like an AP, and take it at a different year. So some students actually do complete the project in a different year than the sophomore or the junior, just depending upon their track.
Got it. And then, but current seniors and juniors do not need it to graduate from high school.
Correct.
But our
Yeah,
sophomores and done well.
Correct. We've been piloting it, and with obviously with the COVID and the pandemic, we were doing that last year at the tail end of last year at the high school, because as we recall, we were remote until March. So we were doing those pilots at the end of last year.
Cool. Any other questions or comments? All right.
Thanks, everyone.
And that'll do it for the superintendent's update. Thank you to both of you. All right, everybody, we're going to move on to new business. And that means the first item here is the Nrhs capital plan update.
So, Madam Chair, I'd like to introduce to everyone our Director of Facilities, Mr. Rod Frieswick, to offer the capital update. Mr. Frieswick.
Good evening, everybody. Alita, is there, you just share the screen with the, there we go. Hope everybody is having a good evening. So let's go through the slides here. Most of you know how the capital expenditures work for the district. Every budget season, the town asks us to prepare a 5-year capital for each member towns. And that goes through the finance committee to make a determination as to whether if they would like to present a capital request in the annual town meeting. Okay. Definition of a capital project is construction project alteration to the buildings or grounds or replacement or additional. Hold on one second. In addition to a permanent fixture or furnishings of the building with a value of an excess of $10,000. Member towns are responsible for capital expenditures in their buildings. Okay, Lita. Capital expenditures for a regional high school and for district-wide use are responsibility of the regional school district and are funded through appropriations from the member towns. Capital requests this year for the high school. There are no major capital repairs. Right now, we're going to repair and replace if necessary due to the possible new construction or renovation project. Provisions have been made in the budget under scheduled maintenance lines of the facilities budget. District-wide capital vehicles, we're looking to continue our yearly phase of upgrading our fleet. So one of the asks this year is going to be a new student transportation van for extra curricular activities, sporting events, and things like that. Bolton capital, as many of you know, we had some flooring issues in Bolton this summer, very high water table, and we found that it had caused mold problems in the Florence Sawyer School. So one of the capital requests this year is going to be doing moisture mitigation on the first floor of that building and replacing the carpeting to VCT tile in the entire building. Okay. Lancaster, we have quite a bit in Lancaster this year. We're looking to replace the second boiler in addition to the other boiler that's getting replaced in the very near future. There's 5 classrooms on the northeast side of the building that has moisture in the slab, and we're looking to do moisture mitigation there and replace the VCT flooring. The clock system down in Lancaster, both on MRE and the LBMS side of the building, is failing, and a lot of the clocks are not synchronized, and they do not work on a bell system down there. So trying to coordinate dismissals for class and lunch and recess, and even the end of the day is difficult at times. We're looking to do some carpeting replacement at the MRE and LBMS office suites, the MRE and LBMS libraries, and in the auditorium. Okay. Stowe Capital, we're presenting to Widen Hartley Road. We found that with, due to COVID, there's been a lot more parents transporting their children to and from school, which poses an issue because the cars back up onto Hartley Road, basically blocking one of the lanes. And also widening the Hartley Road will give us more parking for larger events when there's not enough parking up on in the parking lot of Hale and also over at Center School. And another item would be the refinishing of the gym floor up at Hale. And that's what we have for capital. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Rich.
I'm just curious. Good job, Rob. First of all, thank you for presenting
Thanks.
that. Are there any numbers associated with any of these stuff? Does it roll up to an approximate amount? Is it?
Yeah. I mean, at the high school, I've got some numbers here in front of me. We've got some HVAC compressors and condensing units. The cafeteria compressor needs to replace. That's around $12,000. The auditorium at the high school, lighting at the auditorium at the high school is just about failed. There's only one company on the East Coast that services that old PAR lighting. So they can come in, they've got parts taken from other buildings that have been decommissioned to get the old system back up and running. We're looking approximately $25,000. That's just to get the system up and running. If they find any other repairs that are needed after that, obviously that's going to be an additional expense. There's various concrete repairs that are needed around the high school, sidewalks, concrete aprons, things like that need to be repaired just from fatigue over the years. Parking lot striping needs to be redone. We had damage to the boiler smokestack from the heavy winds over the past year. We lost the rain cap on top. It also broke a couple of the support guide wires that attached to the building that need to get repaired. And that's about $9,000 for that. I can go back to, Rita, if you want to back up to the town-based capital, I can go through some of the numbers for that.
Rich, are you interested in seeing the town-based numbers or just the district's liability?
I was just curious what they were, like ballpark, maybe not the individual line items, but like Stowe's nut is going to be,
So I could tell you, still right now we're looking at in between 60 and 70,000. Lancaster, I don't have them totaled up, but I believe it's in between 350 and 400,000. And in Bolton, it's around 300 to 350,000 for the carpeting.
That's what I was looking for. Much appreciated.
Welcome.
Great. Thanks so much, Rob, for that. Let's see, Amy.
Sorry, hit the wrong button there. Yeah, I was curious if there was any discussion about air conditioning at Florence Sawyer. This is something that's come up over the years, and I thought I got wind of, thought I heard that this is something that was in the works, but I don't know on the list. Could you expand
Mr.
on
Frieswick, if I can address this for just a moment. I've been in conversation with Don Lowe in regards to that particular project, Ms. Cohen. And so he is still currently working on that. Mr. Frieswick can talk about sort of estimates to do that project. We're looking at, there's various funding sources like ARPA that can subsidize that. Ultimately, we're going to have to go forward with a warrant article, but we just don't know exactly what that would be at this point. So I would not anticipate, that is not something that's being prepared for this spring town meeting. Mr. Frieswick, do you want to talk about the estimated cost of the project in general?
Sure. Yep. We did an HVAC analysis with BLW engineers to give us various options for that building to get air conditioning in that building. And we narrowed it down to two or three options. And we're looking in between $1.5 and $1.6 million to excuse me, upgrade that school. to have air conditioning in it. So it's going to be a sizable lift for the town of Bolton. And like Superintendent Downing said, Town Administrator Lowe is, trying to, offset some of that cost with some federal funding.
Thank you. Let's go over to Mary.
So my question has to do with, the 5-year capital plan, and there was an ask on the regional agreement amendment advisory about including in that 5-year capital plan projected depreciable life. And I'm just wondering how complicated that would be to add that, Rob. And I guess it would be for every one of the capital items or Pat to, because I didn't know how to answer that, and so I'm going to ask you.
Looks like
Go ahead,
Pat
Pat.
wants to jump in. Yeah.
I have a comment on that. Every town has their own work page for their capital planning, and they all ask us for a 5-year request. So we anticipate that certain things will need to be done, like say in Stowe, one of the schools may need their parking lot replaced in 4 years. So we would put that on the capital plan as well.
But I think what the question is whether depreciation. So saying, talking about what the capital cost is, and then giving some kind of a idea about depreciation. That's all.
Mary, Pat, before you jump in, I'm sorry. Mary, can you clarify for me? Are you saying that the current regional agreement asks that the 5-year capital plan include that depreciation? Or is this something that we're adding? Or is this just something that you're wondering about?
This is something that was suggested. And so what I do is when any member suggests anything, as the people on the committee, who are on the RAAC can attest, I investigate it. And so it doesn't mean that it is necessarily going into that. And so I was just trying to get an idea of how much, whether that's already done, whether that's already included. It seemed to be that the person who asked for this was asking for a 5-year capital plan, which we already do. So that was one thing I found out, that we already do the capital plan. And then there was something about projected depreciable life. I'm just taking those words, and there's no more explanation I can give than that. And so I just figured this is the place to explore that. And that's all I'm doing.
Thanks, Mary. So Pat, did you want to jump in on that?
Yes, I just wanted to comment on the forms. At least I'm pretty sure it's Bolton and Stowe ask for a life expectancy of the capital project. So,
okay.
Thanks, Steve, perhaps, or I should say, Steve, do you want to just jump in and address what Mary was saying?
I just wanted to say that we don't, in the accounting for municipalities and governmental entities, they don't really depreciate any items. So the word depreciable is not really applicable here. The useful life, which was mentioned just a minute ago, that's more what they should be asking for, because even they don't depreciate. Even the individual towns do not depreciate their capital expenses. In government settings, I believe that any capital expense is basically expensed off at the year it's done.
So I just want to thank Pat and thank Steve, because I feel that gives me an answer to bring back. Thank you.
Great, Mary, thanks. Steve, you had something else though.
I'll think of it.
Oh, okay. Sean, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. Either Rob or Kirk can jump in. Looking for an update on the heating situation over at the Lancaster schools. I noticed I don't think the portable generators have been installed yet. And obviously with the cold snap, the question's going to rise. How are we doing there?
The mobile boiler plant is there. It was installed just before, just after Thanksgiving, and it's been up and running ever since then. The building, past couple of mornings have been in the single digits, and there's been no heating issues whatsoever. I did have a brief conversation with the boiler company today. They were hoping to see the cast iron sections this week. They haven't heard from the manufacturer this week, so last 2 weeks or last week, we were hoping that mid-February we would be up and running, but I'm not hanging my hat on that at this point after that conversation today. But like I said, the mobile plant is installed, it is running, and everything is running as it should.
Okay, Kirk, are we getting any communication from the town in regards to supporting that?
Kirk, if you don't mind me jumping in really quickly, I wonder if you think
Sorry,
in your expert opinion, Kirk, if you think that we're veering from our agenda here.
I think this is within the capital update for Lancaster, so I think it's okay.
Thank you.
I did meet with Jeff Netting. He is the interim town administrator, and that is going to be going in front of the Lancaster folks. I believe that date is February 14th. So
thank you.
That's when the article will go forward, Mr. Windsor.
Thank you, sir.
Great, thanks, Sean. Steve, did you recall?
Yeah, the only, yes, I did. Thank you.
Yeah.
The hail stage lighting, which is an item I brought up to Pat Maroney a number of weeks ago, and she said she would forward it to Rob. Has anything been looked at for that?
I actually have been in contact with Barbizon Lighting, and they are scheduled to come out on the Tuesday of February break to take a good look at that and try to get that stuff resolved.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Amy.
Yeah, just quick clarification. The items listed in this presentation, do those represent the requests for a 5-year period, or are those just for this upcoming fiscal year?
That is just this coming fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Rich.
Just to clarify, these are your asks, right? This is what you, so this already had a vetting by you and the superintendent and the other appropriate folks. This is what you want. This is what you want to go on. I'll go on the warrant. Is that right?
Correct.
Can somebody correct me if I'm wrong? The Nashoba projects, the high school projects go into our budget. Is that right?
Under schedule maintenance, in my budget, under schedule maintenance.
Into the facilities budget. Okay.
Yep.
But I think they go, maybe Mr. Rubenstein or the superintendent knows, but I think they go into the capital or Pat. It's a different, it's not part of the operating budget. It's part of the capital budget, right? And that's allocated separately from the operating budget.
It would, if it was a major capital expenditure, it would be in the capital, but most of these are repairs. So.
In other words, though, most of it's going to go into the operating budget. Is that what I heard you?
Correct.
For the high school. Okay.
Any other questions for Rob? As always, it's a pleasure, Rob.
Thank you. I hope everybody has a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining. All right, everybody. We are now moving on to our next matter of new business, and that is the change to the school calendar just for the high school. Kirk?
At this point, I'd like to bring forward Dr. Kate Boynton. Included in your packet is a memo for a request to change the school calendar, along with a copy of this year's school calendar. At this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Boynton.
Thank you, Superintendent Downing. It's good to see everybody. Thank you, Madam Chair. So if you have the memo in front of you, due to the increased infection rates due to COVID-19, generally impacting staff and student attendance, as well as kind of taking into consideration student social emotional well-being, along with staff. Our leadership team at the high school met on Thursday January 6th to deliberate on whether or not to continue with the traditional midterm schedule. It was a really rich discussion, and ultimately the team really unanimously decided that at this juncture for this year, it would be best to cancel traditional midterm exams and shift to a regular bell schedule for that week. And what that means is that we would need to come to all of you to request a change to the high school schedule. The midterm schedule typically includes late starts every single day of midterms to allow for the midterm schedule to flow. And we would like to increase back to full class days on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday to allow for more time on learning. We think that would be beneficial for students. We'd like to maintain the 2-hour delay on the last day of the quarter, and that would be to allow for teachers to schedule meetings with students to allow for maybe some extra time on assessments that might be given, or makeup work, for example, on the last day of the quarter. Many of our classes are semester-based, and so that would be the last day for students and teachers to be able to touch base. So this would be kind of teacher-driven and directed at teacher discretion if they felt they needed to meet with a student during that 2-hour time frame prior to the last class meeting on that Thursday before the end of first semester and second quarter. So with that, I respectfully request the school days to be back to full days on the 24th, 25th, and 26th, and back to a regular schedule.
Okay.
I'll take any questions as well.
Any questions or comments? Mike?
Yep, just curious whether the revision is simply to the schedule, or does it still give classroom teachers the autonomy to administer midterms?
Not midterms.
They choose?
Yeah, Mike, Mr. Horish, not midterms. If teachers want to assess end of unit or an end of the quarter smaller exam, but the idea is not a very large high stakes assessment, not appropriate at this time to do with the absences that we've seen an increase in absences on the part of students. We've seen staff absences as well that have impacted time on learning. So the idea is really to scale things back. That said, we have some senior semester classes, especially in our social studies area, that they have been doing and working on capstone projects. And so those capstone projects are still in place. Those are projects that students have been working on over time. So it's not something that is going to be introduced as new, and students will be able to present over several days during that week. During that week, the idea is that there's some teacher discretion, but your traditional, let's say, for example, 100 multiple choice question midterm exam is not going to happen. It just does not seem like a right thing to do at this time, even broken up over several days.
Okay, just as a quick follow-up, if I may, do you have any, I know this is a leadership decision, but do you have any numbers that suggest the level of faculty support on this decision?
Yeah, so our department heads, when they knew we were going to be talking about this, they went to, they surveyed their departments. I don't have hard numbers, but there was pretty general support that if we were going to make this decision, let's do it now, and let's make sure that we're consistent with that. And I have at least 6 staff members reached out by email to say, thank you so much. This is actually really helpful for us and for our students. I haven't had, walking the building and touching base with folks. Nobody has indicated that they are unhappy about the decision. I think everyone is really thankful to be given a breath and to really hone in on on supporting students learning. I think this is an opportunity to add that piece to it, to add that instructional time back into the day.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy.
Yeah, I have 2 things, if that's okay. The first is a question, the second is a request. The first question is actually a point of clarification, just to help me understand, because there's a statement in the memo that says quarters 1 and 2 will now each be 50% of the semester 1 grade. So I was wondering if you could expand on that. It implies that the grading scheme was different when midterms were going to be happening, and I just don't understand how that works.
Yep. So in Power School, when we're calculating semester 1 grade, that's how Nashoba does it. Some schools don't calculate a semester 1 grade. Nashoba does calculate a semester 1 grade. Ultimately, that goes into the year grade. Each quarter, it weighs 45%, and then the midterm is 10%. With the midterm gone, we increase the weight of first and second term to be 50%. For the semester grade, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sure.
The second was a request just to see if our student representatives wanted to offer any feedback on this change, and
as always, our high school
back on the student voice.
Our high school representatives are always welcome to weigh in on matters on the agenda. So Sonia, start us off.
Yeah, I heard also just a general consensus from students. There's a lot of relieved stress on the cancellation of midterms. I had a few of my classmates who were out because of COVID or close contact like situations, and they were very stressed about it until they got canceled. And I also did we do a question of the day every day for track, just check in on all of the teammates, and we asked what's been stressing you out recently. And before that question, before it was canceled, a lot of them were really stressed about the midterms coming up, but then since then it's been a lot better. So just on general well-being of the people I've been interacting, I think it's a really positive thing. And most of my teachers, and I'm sure Dan's too, are having just an end of topic test around the same time to close out the quarter semester.
Thanks, Sonia. Dan, did you want to add anything at all?
Sure. So I would agree with most of what you said. I just want to add that I noticed you mentioned about teachers and students being out a lot, and I just want to reflect the same thing, that there's a couple of my teachers who have been out for multiple days, some just one day, and students as well. The classrooms seem to be emptier than they were before. So thanks.
Great. Thanks, Dan and Sonia. I'd like to add one kind of additional point of reference that I think is important to keep in mind, that we have 2 classes of students, our 9th and our 10th graders, who have never taken a high stakes test. And I think this is really just not the right time to be introducing something like that. There is definitely a time and a place for a midterm or a final exam. Our students headed off to college are definitely, they need to be prepared and have that experience. But I think at this juncture, it's, being mindful of student stress, and thanks for Sonia and Dan for bringing that up, being mindful of the multiple absences that students and teachers have had, and that our 9th and 10th graders have never experienced a high stakes test like this. And our other classes, our 11th and 12th graders did not take midterms or finals last year either. So everybody's a little bit out of practice, and I think it's okay to go a little more slowly. And then in the springtime, when hopefully numbers are better, we've got a little more time to prepare then for what final exams might look like for those grades.
Great. Sonia, go right ahead.
Just to be quick, just kind of echoing that of the students, and my teammates that were expressing a lot of stress, they were the freshmen and sophomore students that have never taken a midterm or final in high school.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments around this? Don't see any hands. So I think, Mike, we are ready for our motion.
Sure, I'll move to approve a revision to the Nashoba Regional School District SY 21-22 calendar to change the Nashoba Regional High School late starts on January 24th, 25th, and 26th, 2022 to a regular school day, January 27th, 2022 will remain a late start.
I have a second.
Second.
Thanks, Sharon. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have one. I support the calendar change. I just have a request that I've seen some discussion among parents lately when they're looking at calendars on the website and finding older versions that have caused confusion when things change. So when this gets adopted, just trying to, I guess, request that we make this front and center so that there isn't any confusion over the changes. For people who are not following our meetings as closely as we would like them to.
Any other questions or comments?
Will do, Amy. Thank you.
All right, everybody, we're going to take the roll. So I vote yes. Mary?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Amy?
Yeah.
Sharon?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Rich votes yes too.
Oh, darn it, Rich. I'm sorry. Thank you. Now it's unanimous. Thanks, Dr. Boynton. We appreciate that.
Thanks, everyone.
That thought and care. It's really great. All right. Back to my agenda here. So our next topic here are a couple of policy changes. So the policy subcommittee came up with or has two policies that we're going to change. One is incredibly basic, the change. One is a little bit more detailed. And Karen, do you feel like you can kind of speak to each of these?
Yeah.
Starting with policy BB.
Sure. Just jump in, Leah, whenever you think you need to. The first one's really basic. So it's policy BB, school committee legal status. It previously listed 8 members of the school committee for terms of 3 years. So the only change to this is that it now says 11. So pretty straightforward on this one.
Okay. I am not seeing that in the motion list, but it is, we're not to be voting tonight. Today's just the first reading.
First viewing, right? So
thanks, Lita. Yeah. Are there any, do you guys have anything that you want the policy subcommittee to take back on this? So we will bring forth a second reading. Oh, Mary, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Okay, so yes, and I agree that this is that this needs to happen. That we have 11 members and we need to change it from 8 to 11. But I want to just talk about this a little tiny bit. This is an MASC policy and recommended policy, and most of the districts whose policies are on the MASC website have this exact language and this exact policy. Now, the RAAC had a question about one of the terms here, and it was in regard to the words absolute and autonomous authority, and specifically the adjective absolute. So there are references to Mass General Law, and so what we've done on the RAAC is we go back and we look all through the Mass General Law, because I was sure that I would find that word absolute there, but I couldn't find it. And sometimes I use Mass General Law if I can't sleep, just to read, but I was really being attentive to it because it can be pretty boring. Anyway, so one of the decisions on the RAAC was to take out the word absolute and just put autonomous authority, because nobody liked the word absolute. I mean, just in general, people don't like the word absolute. However, I asked Dorothy Presser, our field representative from MASC, to weigh in on this because I couldn't find any reference to this in Mass General Law. And here's what she said. I'm quoting Dorothy. You won't find a quote in the law, at least I've never seen one, that will have the word absolute. But the purpose of the wording is to differentiate the school committee from other town boards in the authorities it has. The school committee has certain authorities in the operations that are not subject to review by town meeting or by the selectmen. Mass General Law, Chapter 71, 37 states, the school committee has the authority to hire the superintendent, review and approve budgets, and set goals and policies. In approving budgets, remember that the appropriating authority approves only the bottom line. Town meetings have more line item authority over the municipal budget than over the school budget. Hiring of the superintendent is solely within the purview of the school committee, subject to no one's review or approval. The school committee is the only entity that sets policy and goals for the district, hence the emphasis in the policy wording. It clarifies that in these areas, the school committee does not need to seek the approval of town meeting, the select board, or any other entity in making these decisions. The dictionary meaning of absolute is, quote, not qualified or diminished in any way. It seems an accurate word to use here. There is probably nothing wrong with autonomous authority, but it does weaken the statement. Now, what I want to explain is that I am in favor of keeping this language, and I want to go back to a comment I've made before. It was Maureen Marshall that I was talking about. She's the director of Nrhs, and she was emphatic in emphasizing that as elected town officials, school committee is on equal par, on equal status with the select board. So if we were to have a hierarchical diagram, it would have select board, the elected select board members, but parallel, it would have school committee elected members. And I think that's really important to remember. I'll bring this back to the RAAC, and the reason it comes up is that in some towns, I'm not talking about our towns, but in some towns, the select board treats the school committee as though it is another town board under the jurisdiction of the select board. I think it's really important for us to understand our charge as elected school committee members. And so that's the intent of this language. I'm totally in favor of it, but anytime I can make this point, and I've made it a couple of times, and if there's an appropriate place, I'm going to make it, and I have made it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Any other comments on this that the policy subcommittee can take back? Okay, got it. Oh, Rich, really quick, go ahead. Yeah.
I just wanted to say here, Dr. McCarthy.
She was our fierce regional agreement champion. All right, guys, let's move on to the policy that's just a little bit more complicated. And Karen, I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure. So this one is JFAA, the residency policy. So it was requested of the policy committee to add in some language to make things a little bit more specific in terms of what applicants for enrollment need to submit in order to have evidence of residency, occupancy, and identity. So this actually came directly, I have too many tabs open, from, there it is, from the registration checklist that the district uses. So, and Leah, we did get an email today, right, about one other possible adjustment to this that we would bring forth next time. Is that correct?
That is correct. I think Kirk would like to illuminate that.
Sure.
Exactly. This is the checklist that we use when we have families move into town to prove residency, occupancy, and identity. So it makes sense to put this checklist in the policy so that it will remove, frankly, it just provides the kind of clarity that helps with difficult discussions when you're looking for proof. In column B, under evidence of occupancy, the first item is bill dated within the past 45 days showing a district address, Bolton, Lancaster, Stowe. I do feel that is too nebulous. It's not specific, nor does it require some action to take place at the home, as does activating the gas and electric and setting up the cable and the phone. Those are things that actually show occupancy within the home. So what I would suggest is that we just remove bullet number 1 and just have bullets 2, 3, and 4 remain.
Okay, so policy can do that. So that will not be there when we do the second reading. Any other comments or questions for the subcommittee to consider? Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I had a couple of quick questions here, and let me just go through the list here. First of all, you said there was a request made to craft this additional policy provision. Where did that request come from?
Our superintendent.
Okay. So in that regard, the second question I have is, who crafted this language?
This is a document that has been utilized in the district for quite some time, Mr. Gleason. So I can't tell you who the original author was.
Oh, okay. All right.
It is just the form that has been used for many years.
Okay. So the reason I ask is I'm looking at the first sentence, and forgive my ignorance, but I see the word applicants, and this is going to be the dumb question of the night, but who is the applicant?
Yeah, these are our potential residents. So they're not residents until they prove that. So my guess is that language was originally used as the person who is coming in to register for school.
Okay, so the reason I ask is, and let me just play devil's advocate here for a moment. Pardon me, Madam Chair, for going on with this line of questioning. It says that, I'm reading the last line, that the parent, guardian, or student who is unable to produce the required documents should contact the superintendent of schools. So I assume it's a parent. You know, a parent would generally have either a valid ID, valid mass ID, excuse me, possibly a driver's license or possibly a passport. But if your applicant is a student of a certain age, they may not have any of those documents in column C. So is it always a parent that would say, like a 14-year-old that's applying for enrollment in our school?
Yeah.
Would it be the parent who would then be applying? Would they be required because of that age, or is there? Because I can see many 14-year-olds have none of those IDs.
Yeah, that's a fine question, Attorney Gleason. The school, they couldn't apply. They would have to, the guardian would have to apply, I believe, by the law. So at the age of 16 and older is where there would be a potential for a student to attempt to register themselves.
Okay, and the last question I had, Madam Chair, is going back to the first sentence. The requirements are one document from each of the 3 columns, and it says, and any other document that may be requested. So I guess I'm wondering about that language. Is that the intent of our district? Because I don't know who makes these, who would be making that request. Is it who, actually, I'll ask the superintendent, who makes the request in this regard? Who would ask for that additional documentation?
The superintendent's office would, superintendent or designee. Because Mr. Gleason, I've had situations in my past where I've been in charge of these things and fraudulent documents are brought forward. So we ask for supplemental documents to verify.
Oh, you don't have to convince me of that. I see this and I look at it as good. I'm just looking at that and said, is it the intent that the superintendent, the designee, and I'm not going to object to it, have that type of authority? Because you could say, well, you give me A, B, and C, but now I'm going to request X. X isn't listed there. That could be anything, you know. And I'm not suggesting we don't have that language, but this paints with a wide swath, Madam Chairman and Mr. Superintendent, that you could ask. I want, I want to see your tax returns. I want to see, your birth certificate. I want to see your marriage certificate. I want to see a bunch of other things. I just don't know what it is. Just if that's the intent, that's fine. But that's pretty broad discretionary authority there in this policy.
Thank you, Attorney Gleason. I'm going to take that under advisement and look into that a little more as well. Thank you.
I think too, it's noteworthy that this has been the practice of the district for a very long time. We're just taking what is ultimately a protocol and putting it into the policy so that anybody who's thinking about moving into our district It's completely transparent what they need to produce in advance so that they know, oh boy, I better get the cable set up before so that I can just produce that bill. So that nobody runs into any glitches. Although what Joe was saying is something to definitely be mindful of. So Kirk, do you think that perhaps you will bring some advice to the policy subcommittee?
Yeah, I think that would be most appropriate.
So
Madam
our
Chair.
next meeting, Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, is January 31st.
Correct.
Yeah, so that
Okay.
would be your opportunity if we wanted to give this a second reading at the next meeting, if.
Right. Our next meeting is January 26th. So if I came to the 31st,
Oh.
that would be at the February 9th school committee meeting then for
Yep.
second reading.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mary.
I just wanted to comment that as a principal in Hudson, I was often in the situation of using a very similar list to this with similar criteria. So I think this is likely used in many districts. It's worth our looking at it and thinking about it, but it all looks very familiar to me, what we went through in Hudson.
Thanks, Mary. Anybody else before we close it out? Great. All right. We are going to move on now to our next agenda item, and that is our Drj Action Items. And I'd like to welcome to the front of the room here our Drj liaison, Miss Sharon Pock. Sharon, why don't you open this up for us and introduce our special guest?
I thought for sure you were going to introduce Laurie. So
It's all you.
So Laurie Burnett, who is the chair of the Drj Advisory Committee, is joining us tonight to share information with us and answer questions if we have questions. There are just a couple of things that we wanted to bring forward and formalize, I guess. In November, the Drj had sent a letter to this committee requesting that we recommit to the resolutions that were crafted and signed by the school committee in June of 2020, and also requesting an amendment to be made in the Drj acronym. The recommitment to the resolutions is in recognition that a good number of people that are currently on the school committee were not on the committee in June of 2020, at the time when that resolution or those resolutions were made. And the request for the amendment to the long form of the Drj name is to better reflect the goals of their advisory group. So it seems this is different than the agenda, but I hope this is okay, Leah. That it seems to make sense to do the amendment to the name first. Okay. So what the committee, what Drj has asked, and Laurie, jump in here if I'm mangling things. What the Drj committee has asked is that we amend the long form name of the Drj from what is currently diversity, equity, acceptance, and racial justice to diversity, equity, awareness, and racial justice. So the change there is from acceptance to awareness. And Laurie, if you don't mind, you had summed that up so nicely to me when we talked yesterday. If you can sum that up again, that would be really great.
Sure. Thank you for having me here tonight and for taking this up. I'm excited to be here and that you guys have taken our letter into consideration. Briefly, we just felt that the acceptance is kind of giving permission and it sort of centers one space. And by doing awareness, it's more inclusive of our goal of learning and that this is a sort of a community process of learning and growing. And so that was really our intent around changing acceptance to awareness. And it sort of fit in with the acronym as well.
Right. So, Sharon, before we make any kind of a motion, I wonder if I could just kind of straw poll the committee or just say, is there anything that you would like to say before we formulate this motion? Okay, not seeing any hands. And so, Sharon, do you think you could maybe make a motion that's very similar to what you just said?
I will try. I move to change the long form of the name of the Drj Advisory from Diversity, Equity, Acceptance, and Racial Justice to Diversity, Equity, Awareness, and Racial Justice Advisory.
I'm going to second that. Thanks, Sharon. Do we have any questions? I see Joe's hand. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I want to thank you for having invited Ms. Burnett and having her. And I was at my request at our last meeting that we have somebody from DRJ here to answer some questions regarding the letter that they had sent back to us on dated the 16th and read into the record on the 17th. As Ms. Burnett knows, as Ms. Pock knows, and I believe the chair knows, I did submit some written questions to Ms. Burnett in advance of our meeting. So in that regard, I want to do that because I didn't want any to be any surprises or anything or catch anybody off guard. So Ms. Burnett, I would like to go to question number 3 that I had on that memorandum that I sent you. And I realize that we're changing the word acceptance to awareness, but while we're changing the words of the title, I would like to concentrate on those last 2 words of racial justice. And as I pose in my question, does the term racial justice denote fairness and justice for all identifiable groups, including national origin, religious affiliation, sexual orientations? Is that the intent of the nomenclature here?
Yes, I'm assuming that question is directed to me. As a committee, we have not specifically discussed the additional letters, so I can't speak, I guess, specifically to the committee. I would say that in general, when we're talking about equity, we're talking about race, ethnicity, linguistic background, physical and cognitive ability, gender, sexual orientation, economic class, and sort of any, we use the word, perhaps what our committee has talked about is sort of groups that are historically marginalized. That while this committee hasn't spoken to that, I can bring this back to the committee and ask questions, and I welcome you all to have a conversation. But that, I guess, is the response I can provide for that question.
Anything else, Joe?
No, I'm all set. Not Tim.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we'll take the vote. Mary?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Sharon?
Yes.
I see Alita's hand.
Did we get a second on that?
I seconded it, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
And Sharon said yes. Steve?
Abstain.
Sean?
Same.
Brett?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Amy? Did you say yes, Amy? I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Thank you. I think I got everybody.
Windsor, did Mr. Windsor abstain?
Yes.
I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I believe the motion passes.
9-2.
Thank you. So, Laura, your committee can now henceforth go by the new name. Steve, I see your hand.
Yeah, Alita, the vote was not 9-2. The vote was 9-0 and 2.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve. Okay. Sharon or Mary, not Mary, I'm sorry, Sharon or Lori. Let's move into the second half of this conversation. And that is the conversation about recommitting the school committee to the 2 documents that are posted in the meeting materials. I wonder, well, the first one is the statement of the Nashoba Regional School Committee's responsibility for racial justice and equity. And the second is our anti-racism resolution. When these two things were voted in, we had a different membership. So the Drj advisory is advising us to recommit to these resolutions so that everybody on the committee can kind of state their position. So before we make a motion, Lori, do you want to add anything to that, or Sharon?
I think you adequately represented that, Leah. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any comments or questions on this and maybe moving forward here? I see Mary's hand and then Joe.
So I don't have the those two documents in front of me, but one of them has superintendent, and then the reference is she. And so just the language there, because it's he, or it could, I'm not sure whether we want to put, and I would say his, her, but alphabetically, it really should be her, his, or they. Anyway, I just, we just need to change that pronoun reference.
Yeah, I see Sonia's comment that they can also be substituted.
Okay, how about that?
As a generic,
yeah.
and not generic, but all inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's noted. Thanks, Mary. Joe.
Thank you again, Madam Chairman. And again, this is a question that I did pose to the chair of the DRJ in advance of our meeting tonight. And I actually had three questions. One was the first one that I asked, and then one pertains to the anti-racism resolution that was promulgated by the MASC. So if the chair will indulge me for a moment, it's kind of a compound question, but I did give notice to Ms. Burnett, so she knows this is coming, and I'm hoping that there can be an appropriate response. So my question is such that the DRJ is advising and suggesting the district committee consider a reaffirmation of the MASC's anti-racism resolution, which provides in part that every district will examine their policies for institutional and systemic racialized practices and implement change with sustainable policies that are evidence-based. In regards to that, I would pose the following query: that given that the district committee, along with numerous other school districts throughout the Commonwealth, have adopted for the most part the Mass Association of School Committees model policies, has inquiry been made by DERJ of the MASC as to whether they themselves have reviewed and audited their own model policies and identified any institutional and systemic racialized practices? And if so, what suggested changes or amendments is the MASC recommending to its membership? The second part of the question deals directly with DRJ, and has the DRJ on its own identified any policies adopted by the Nashoba Regional School District that basically encompass any sort of institutional or systemic racialized practices? And if so, which policies or policies have been identified in this regard, and what is the exact nature of the institutional and or racialized practices, if known, and what changes would DEI recommend? So I guess, my question stems from the fact that we're being asked by, or being recommended by the MASC to take this resolution, and that's fine. I have no issue with that. But given that these policies, our policies, are generally the MASC model policies, I'm just wondering, have they done anything in their end in regards to the policies to identify what they're suggesting might be institutional or systemic racial practices?
So Lori, just really quickly before anybody moves forward, Joe, in all of your expertise, can you tell me that moving into this domain of questions is within the agenda's limit?
You're asking me if the question that I posed pertaining to the reaffirmation of the MASC anti-racism resolution is within the scope of the agenda item. Are we not reaffirming the resolution? Did I not ask a question directly related to the resolution?
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is, are you asking Lori if DRJ has brought the movement directly to MASC?
I'm asking if because the answer, I think, on our end is that we took this affirmation, this resolution over a year ago, and I don't know if we've done anything in regards to any sort of forensic audit of our own policy manual. And my feeling about it is our policy manual is two things. It's very extensive, and it is, for the most part, crafted and authored by MASC. So the point I'm asking, or the point of question I'm asking is that in regards to this request, I think it could come down to a very simple yes or no answer. Has any inquiry been made of MASC as to whether or not they've done their own internal review or audit of their own policies that they've promulgated and sent out to all the districts for acceptance? So I'm kind of looking to see that they're suggesting that there are policies that may have institutional and systemic racial overtones to them. If that's their suggestion, my question is, where are they? Can somebody identify these to me? Because I keep hearing this, but I don't know of any of our policies that in fact would rise to this level. I could be wrong, but that's why I'm asking the question.
Okay. Lori, do you want to address that? Has Drj gone down this road at all?
So I guess my sort of trying to think about the response to, I guess, we have not, because we took those two resolutions as mandates from you to progress in our work, which was partly why we sort of began with asking you, okay, it's been 1.5 years to sort of, recommit to it. We took it as it was our job as the school district and us to support you all in doing that work. That being said, my only contact, my outreach to MASC was more around, trying to sort of understand open meeting law and, the role of our committees and how are other districts, running committees similar to ours. And so that is the extent of my contact with MASC. I would certainly say, I don't want to speak as I'm just a representative of the committee. I don't want to speak or provide answers that I haven't had a chance to bring back to the committee as well. So certainly, I can bring this back to the committee as well and, have us bring a response back, if that's helpful. Does that answer your question, Joe?
May I speak, Madam Chair?
Sure.
Yeah, it does. I mean, to me, and Ms. Burnett, just so I don't want my question to be misconstrued. I fully understand that the burden is on the district committee first and foremost to initiate this kind of review. I think I'm on fairly sturdy ground here when I say that since we voted on that resolution, I don't think that we've made as a committee a significant amount of progress in that regard. So I guess I'm kind of being a little bit lazy about the whole thing, but I am embracing the first maxim of equity, which that he that seeks equity must do equity. And in that regard, my query was, the MASC is suggesting to its membership that they take this resolution. And I'm like, fine. And you're suggesting that there may be, systemic racial overtones to some of our policies. But if you're asking us to do this, have you yourself done it? And I was just asking if you had inquired. I certainly haven't. I don't think our committee hasn't. And I was just wondering if your committee has, and apparently it has not. But I think the more important question, or the most important part of the question, is the second part is, at this juncture, and again, I'm not expecting, because it's an extensive document, can you and your committee identify, even minimally, any policies that are currently in place in this district that meet that very low standard of institutionalized and systemic racial overtones?
So just to jump in here, I think that what Lori's saying is that they haven't begun that work yet. And I'm so grateful to Lori to picking up the Drj for us and kind of re-engaging the group and even getting new members interested in joining and helping. And I think that what Joe's asking is the future work in combination with the policy subcommittee, which it's one of our goals to help with that. So I see other hands up. I'm going to go to Steve, Sean, then Sharon.
Okay, I tend to agree with Attorney Gleason. quite truthfully, making a reaffirmation right now of a policy that seems to be full of nothing but hot air would not be beneficial. I think once we establish a group, whether it's the policy subcommittee or another special subcommittee that could be appointed to review our policies, number one, and number two, to review them with the assistance of a trained individual in this area. I think it's silly for us to reaffirm this thing right now.
All right, thanks for that, Steve. Go ahead, Sean.
I would actually agree with both the gentlemen, Stephen and Attorney Gleason. Not being on the committee when this was sort of brought into play, I understand that it was sort of rolled along. And Lori, thank you very much for your work on it. My concern is there appears to be a lot of questions in regards to it, and where does that bring us in our responsibility, and thus where does it bring sort of Kurt, where he's sort of running the show over there. So I think it might be just a little bit early to be bringing this forward. And again, I would agree with both of the gentlemen's points.
Sharon?
I think so. From my conversations with Laurie and the DRJ group, the intent in bringing this forward at this time is also in recognition that it has been an extraordinary couple of years, unprecedented couple of years with all the other things that have been happening. And you are absolutely right that no progress has been made, or little progress has been made in regard to, looking through policies or perhaps updating policies. Quite frankly, I don't know when that would have happened, because there's not been a moment where that energy was available to really work on that. So I think, and Laurie, jump in and fill in the blanks or correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that the intent was to say, this is what you said that you wanted in June of 2020. Are you still on board with this? Is this still what your committee wants DRJ to be working on?
And Lori, feel free if you wanted to jump in.
Yes, I would say our asking of this was also to, as an indication, or do you continue to support us in moving forward on this work? And which was also why we asked the following question, sort of, where do you see value in this work, and what are you doing now, and where do you need more assistance? So our understanding of this was more, yes, we want to move forward on this work, and we know we need to do learning.
Sharon, did you want to jump back in? I see your golden hand up. Okay, I did see Amy's hand, and then over to Steve.
Thank you. I would argue that this, we adopted this statement on our responsibility for racial justice, and we did take action by creating the DRJ committee. And if we reaffirm this as a committee tonight, then we would be giving that committee some direction, and maybe allow them to do some work to make progress on behalf of the school committee towards these goals. So I think if we do, as a committee, choose to reaffirm it, we would need to update. We might want to bring this back on another agenda to update the language to maybe tidy it up for what this committee feels is appropriate for a charge for the DRJ committee. But I think it's I'd be in favor of going in that direction.
Thanks, Amy.
Reaffirming so that the DRJ knows what their mission is and can get to work on it.
Thanks, Amy. Go ahead, Steve.
Number one, this is a reduplication of our efforts from June of 2020. There was significant discussion at that point, and we are, to a certain extent, and I would ask Mr. Gleason to rule on this, are we not bound by that resolution that we passed in a year and a half ago? That's number one. Number two, is there a motion on the floor to reaffirm at this point?
We have no motion on the floor.
Then I would like to make a motion that we table this for further discussion.
I'll second Mr. Rubenstein's motion.
Okay, I don't like to squelch people who have their hands raised, but a motion has been made.
You have discussion on the motion.
So discussion on the motion to table. I think Mary, perhaps you could go ahead.
I don't want to table this discussion. I have more that I would like to say, so I would not be in favor of that motion. However, you can certainly go ahead and take a vote.
Yeah, well, I'm compelled to now. Any other comments on
Can
the?
we just, could we clarify what a motion to table a discussion means? Because as I recall, that's different than deferring it. If we approve a motion to table it, doesn't that make it dead after this meeting?
Joseph?
No?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. So it's just being tabled for this meeting.
You can table it to a date, so we can move it to a date certain if you want to bring it at the next meeting or 3 months from now, but.
Sharon?
I just want to clarify though that, or make sure that we are aware that there are two different pieces to this as well. So one piece is the anti-racism resolution, which was the MASC boilerplate policy, I believe. Is that correct? And then the other one is the statement of NRSC responsibility on racial justice, which I believe was written by the committee in June of 2020. Is that also correct? So there are two different parts here. So I just don't want to lose track of the fact that there are two different components to this.
Understood. All right, I'm going to take Mary.
So this might be my only time to talk. So the reason that I don't want to table the motion is that I have more to say. So I'm going to say it. When Joe mentioned that this is really the responsibility in terms of looking at any of our policies of our school committee, I agree. And so policy sub, would be the person rather than an advisory, which Drj is. I also want to say that Sharon's point of what has been going on in terms of hiring a new superintendent, COVID, remote versus, just all that has been going on. And I think that had a direct effect on how many people on our committee went to the MASC conference, where I can tell you that a major theme that many districts, and I did report on this, and that's what we're supposed to do when we go to a conference, we're supposed to report on what we went to. And many districts are
This is
engaged
off resolution.
Well, it really isn't, because this has
really
to do with, well, I don't think it does. So
Mary, I think, Mary,
I just want to say one more thing. I want to say that we did pass this resolution, and so that's another reason why I don't want to table it. And table does mean off the table, unless we put in there that table until, and specific language for another meeting. Table means gone, put onto the table, and I just think that this is not the thing to do.
Okay, so we have a motion to table that we need to vote on. And so we'll go around the room and see if tabling is, if there's any other discussion on tabling the motion, I can take it. So Karen?
Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm really clear on what this motion is tabling. Is the motion to table the discussion on recommitting the resolutions, or is the motion to table on anything beyond that that's on the action items for Drj?
So the tabling is on the
Is
conversation.
on the reaffirmation.
Yeah.
That's what the
Recommitting our resolution.
motion is. Reaffirming the resolution and the other document or both of the resolutions that were done in June of 2020. I think they should just stand. I don't think we need to have a reaffirmation, and that's my objection here.
So I think the tabling is going to prevent conversation around a little bit of language change that Lori wanted to bring to us as well. So that's why I am not in favor of tabling, but I am willing to go with the will of the committee. So let's take a vote on the tabling. Mary?
No.
Joe?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mike?
Nope.
Rich?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Rich?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Sharon?
No.
Amy?
No.
Karen?
No.
Brett?
Yes.
Myself, no. Alita?
If I have this correct, it is 4 yeses and 7 nos. If I have it correct, Brett voted yes, Joe voted yes, Steve voted yes, and Sean voted yes.
And Rich.
Anybody else?
Rich.
Oh, Rich did also? Okay, so then it's 5-6. So the motion fails.
Thanks, Alita. All right, so the conversation can continue. And Lori, do you mind if I just ask you to elaborate a little bit? There was a little bit of a language change you wanted to make in the
Yes, I can just read from our letter. We asked that we change from the phrase, change those institutional practices that create different outcomes for different racial and minority groups. We voted to ask a suggestion of changing minority to marginalized in that phrase. And then there's another sentence further down that says, join the superintendent and the leadership team and seek out resources that specialize in active anti-racism education. And that sentence ends in other minorities, and we suggested changing it to other marginalized groups.
Okay, thanks for that advice. Would anybody else like to now kind of, I want to raise my hand really quickly and just say that I agree with Amy. I think that we are already committed to these 2 documents. I think Steve said that too. These documents do stand regardless of what we do here tonight. That language change obviously won't happen. And there's a gender specific word that we wanted to eliminate. But that aside, these do stand, and this is something, and Drj stands. Yeah, Alita.
I just want to clarify something in reviewing the minutes from that vote. The statement was not voted on. The statement was just a statement from the chair. The resolution was the only thing that was voted on.
Interesting.
Just to clarify that, so you're not reaffirming something that was never voted.
Alita, can you restate that? I think what you just said was that the anti-racism resolution was voted on, but the statement was not?
Yeah, it wasn't voted on. It was just a statement read by the chair at the time of the George Floyd instance.
Okay, thank you.
It was not actually a voted document. It was just a statement that was read.
Thank
If
you.
you go back to the June 17th minutes, you can see that.
Okay, so that kind of changes the conversation a little bit. And it seems like our statement on racial justice is the one, the anti-racism resolution is really the kind of codified piece here. So Lori, that's useful. Anybody else want to jump in? Have anything else to say? I think the anti-racism resolution does stand, but the statement of our committee around our responsibility for racial justice and equity is on the record. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the question for me is why reaffirm when we've committed to this? And I'm asking that, very broadly, rhetorically, whether or not that makes sense. I guess if you're, and I was one of the 7 that voted for this. I mean, you can see the vote on the bottom of this. I was the one that voted for it. In fact, anyone who was present at the meeting voted yay. So I certainly support it now. And perhaps there is something a little bit perfunctory about recommitting ourselves, but also at the same time, maybe it's symbolic since, the lion's share of the work hasn't been done yet. It still lies ahead of us. But I'm wondering, for those that are considering voting for this no, I'm wondering if you could help enlighten me what harm it would do to reaffirm that commitment, considering we are sort of emerging into a place where we have the workable space to address these concerns that with 7 of us at least, or most of us that are here voted for. And also after, thinking about that survey and the results of the survey, that, there are certainly things that we are asking for advisement on and direction towards. So I'm just wondering what is the harm of reaffirming that commitment?
Might anybody have a response? Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't disagree with my colleague, Mr. Horish from Bolton. The issue that keeps coming back to me is that, and let me just say this, I suggest that the MASC paints with a very broad brush. And I'm the type of guy that paints by numbers. And I've been hearing this about our policies and practices and our body of statutes in Massachusetts, that I've been hearing this time and time again, inherent within our state statutes and our Code of Massachusetts regulations, in our school policies, we have, as it's stated here, institutional and systemic racialized practices. I would beg for somebody, I am begging for somebody to please tell me sometime before I die, which policy that we've adopted has institutional and systemic racialized practices inherent to it. Which general law in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts right now has institutional and systemic racialized practices and overtones to it? In my younger days, those of us of a certain age, we will remember the blue laws. And if you grew up in the Northeast and what have you, and those were deemed to be on one level racist. It was very easy to understand. They required certain businesses to close on Sundays. And that was an agreement to those of the Seventh-day Adventist faith, to those of the Jewish faith, and to many others. And it was a simple concept. Yes, I can see that. It's very easy. It's not fair to those of the Jewish faith that we should force them to close their businesses on Sundays when they keep holy the Sabbath on Saturday. So I'm just asking as a simple question, and I put it to the chair as a former chair of the policy subcommittee, to our superintendent, to anyone here. Can you point to me, at least as far as our district is concerned, tell me one, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, I'm just asking, please help me understand which policy or policies is systemically racist. That's all I ask.
So Mike, before you jump in, I will just say that I agree with you, Joe. There might be none, but that's why Drj was established, to be our engine for this discovery, because, you know, more cooks in this kitchen is just going to make better bread. And so, you know, as the policy subcommittee chair, I feel like it was last year maybe or the year before, where we listened to Amy Cohen's advice around the calendar, and we tried to make some change around religious holiday observances, et cetera. And so that's something that perhaps none of us thought of, because personally, I'm not Jewish. And so when she brought that to our attention, it's something that we were able to change immediately. Drj can be that group that will identify things that are perhaps underneath MASC's radar, but wholly on ours on the ground level. I would also say that MASC, while they make model policies, they are not the root of all knowledge. And they have model policies that are changed all the time based upon what districts bring to them and say, hey, we've found this and we don't think it's right. And so then they investigate and they change. And so I'm looking forward to Drj being that for us. It's just that we haven't been able to do it yet. And so this is kind of the beginning, I think, for Lori and for the committee. So what you're asking for is what they want to do. So go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, and I would just reiterate that I think you're, Mr. Gleason, I think you're addressing that fourth statement. I'm just going to read that out loud. Whereas every district will examine their policies for institutional and systemic racialized practices and implement change with sustainable policies that are evidence-based. I don't think it's assuming that there are institutional and systemic racialized practices. It's examining the policies. If we don't have those policies, God love us. And if it does, we'll implement the change. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that statement. I think we happen to disagree on how we interpret that statement.
Can I just add a piece here? Just a thought, and that is that I think oftentimes we don't know what we don't know. And if we don't really look at some of these things in a broader perspective and with a wider lens, we may miss something because we just didn't know it. And I have found it, I'm not quite sure what the right word is. Enlightening is the word that comes to mind. I don't know that that's exactly the right word, but you know, when I've been talking with different groups of people, or when I have attended some of the different presentations on awareness and the experience of different marginalized groups of people, things that take place right under my nose that I just didn't see until somebody said, oh, you know, somebody said, this is my experience, this is what's happening. And all of a sudden I said, oh, I just didn't know it. And I think that a piece of this is a learning process on our part to look with a wider lens, to broaden our perspective, and to see, the things that we are doing, does this have equal impact across all groups?
Thanks, Sharon.
I'm done.
So if we want to recommit to this, I will take a motion, or, you know, it's up to you. It's up to you guys.
I just have one more question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Amy.
If we recommit, does that mean that we would be updating this to reflect, would the names of the current members of the school committee would we be reissuing this with the current membership's name?
We could.
Because I think my first meeting of the school committee was like the meeting after this resolution was voted in. So my name is not on this resolution. And I'm in favor of having my name on this resolution. So want to clarify that.
Are you telling me you want to make a motion?
I can do that. I will move to reaffirm the NRSC anti-racism resolution to reflect the current membership of the school committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? Mary?
So could we put in the, amend that to say with the changes instead of minority to marginalized?
I think that was in the other document, if I'm not mistaken, Lori.
Oh, okay. So we don't have to do that. I haven't got them up in front of me, which I should.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
that
so-
language is in the other document, which we can talk about at another time, but because they
Okay.
weren't voted upon.
Okay.
Lori, am I making that up? That's right? Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So never mind.
Okie doke. Sharon?
So for clarification, this motion is just to address the anti-racism resolution, and the statement of responsibility for racial justice would be, then we would discuss that at another time.
I think if necessary, considering that was just a very time-stamped statement of the chair and not a document of the whole.
Okay.
And you guys can disagree with me if you like. Feel free, Mike.
Yeah, I'm actually really fond of Ms. Cohen's comment about reaffirming simply to reflect the new makeup of this school committee. In fact, after having said it, I wonder if this is something that you don't reaffirm every year after there's turnover, just to sort of reiterate that this new permutation of the school committee is steadfast in their support of this resolution. So I see zero downside and tremendous upside in reaffirming. So I don't know why I would vote no.
All right, thanks, Mike. Any other comments? All right, guys, let's take the vote. Mary?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Joe?
Yes, I'll vote in favor of this.
Thanks, Joe. Sharon?
Yes.
Thanks, Rich.
Yes.
Amy? That was a yes, right, Amy? I missed it. Okay. Sean?
I think we should be unified, so I'm going to vote yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
I hope I got everybody. My screen keeps jumping. All right, so the motion passes. And you have the anti-racism resolution intact. The last thing that I just wanted to address here, oh, yeah. Did I miss Steve, Rich?
You got to miss someone.
I believe Steve logged off.
Oh,
Yeah,
boy,
you
we lost. Okay, got it. The last thing on the agenda with regard to this, and I'll just address it very quickly, is all of our subcommittees provided Drj with a bunch of feedback around questions that they posed to us. That has been shared with Lori. It's also in the meeting materials, so anybody can see our responses to those questions. And Lori is going to be on a future agenda. She'll come to us, perhaps with other members of her group, to provide us with kind of the beginnings of the work that they hope to do in advising us in this arena that can, be around the concept of equity in our school district. Sonia.
This is just a vague idea, but at Nashoba, there's a social justice club. And if there's any way that you guys see that they should hop in and be involved, I'm sure it's a pretty small club, but they are very motivated. But that's also a resource of interested kids.
If I can jump in, Leah, yes, they participated, we've met with them this year, so we're excited to continue that and expand it. Thank you.
All right, so more from Lori in the future. Lori, thank you so much for joining us. This is a really interesting conversation. Before you go though, Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I apologize, my fellow committee members. I feel I have really elongated our meeting tonight, but I am appreciative of Ms. Burnett being here, and I'm appreciative of the candid discussion among our members. I did get the email from Ms. Burnett saying that she's going to be back in February, so that I had a third question. So what I'd like to do, Ms. Burnett, is I'd like to hold off on that third question till you come back in February, but I'd like that question to stand, and I would appreciate a response from the DRJ in regards to my third question, which is number 2 in the memorandum when you make your triumphant return in February.
Great. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. So advised.
All right. So Lori, we won't keep you, but we do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me and for your deliberation. It's very much appreciated. Look forward to bringing it back to our committee.
Great. Good luck. All right, everybody. So the time is short indeed, and that 9 o'clock time is inching toward us here. Without objection, I am going to take 2 items of new business and move them to a future agenda. That is E and F, school committee office hours and the revival of Tri-Town. Amy said that the school committee office hours can wait, and the revival of Tri-Town is really targeting next budget season. In the following school year. So we can push those 2 off, and then we're going to move over to our student representative report, Sonia and Dan.
Awesome. Dan, do you want to start us off?
Sure, I can start us off. Some of the stuff we touched on earlier was also some of the stuff we were going to talk about. That's what's it called? The people who were missing in school, like the teachers. It has been impacting our learning, as well as the students missing in the classrooms. I'm sure there's going to be impact on them for how they can learn. And also, as far as masking goes, I'm seeing like some more some better masking etiquette since the announcements that were made. And from there, I'll turn it over to Sonia.
Yeah, kind of on that, I think with just numbers rising, it has been a lot of an increase in people wearing their masks, which has some mixed signals, but it's COVID has also been affecting our sports seasons. With winter track, there was 2 cancellations of meets the past few weeks, and I know with other seasons there's been a few like temporary holds with like hockey and students and staff, and then other teammates or other schools getting COVID. So that's been kind of frustrating and a little bit like bringing down the mood, but there's nothing we can really do about that except for just keeping ourselves as safe as we can be. But there has also been a lot of concern just with I don't know what I was about to say, but oh yeah, just like concern about the stuff that we've been missing from having absent teachers. But in the next few weeks, we're going to see how that plays out. And then just today, we sent out another survey to gather more information on student morale, school spirit, and support. And so soon, eventually, we'll come to you with the whole presentation about that. But we don't have too much just to talk about other than some COVID concern, but that's kind of just been the hubbub at school recently.
Thanks, Sonia. Thanks, Dan. Any questions or comments on, oh, Sonia, go ahead.
I also forgot to mention that the play or the musical is Chicago. They had auditions and they're starting practices or rehearsals already. So that's also an exciting thing coming around.
Wow, that's great. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So Kirk, nothing can be done about the absenteeism at this stage. It is early in the kind of surge situation.
It's climbing. It's climbing on, and we're getting there. I'm hearing some good news reports that maybe we're getting to the peak of this thing, and so there'll be better days ahead. Sonia and Dan, help us out a little bit. I know Dr. Boynton has plans to shift the weekly COVID checks from the small gym to multiple locations. They're working with the testing team now to figure out how they can do that. So just spread the word as Dr. Boynton comes forward with that change. Thank you. You guys are great.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Terrific. All right, my friends. Mary, I'm sensing the 9 o'clock bell. Is everybody okay if we just kind of power through these last couple of items? Everybody's okay with it? Okay, let's power through. So we have our one piece of unfinished business, and that is the vote on the building rental rates. And I think that Mike has a motion for us.
Yep, I move to approve the facilities rental rates as presented on December 15th, 2021.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Rich. Joe, question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. This question actually comes from one of my neighbors that was looking over the rental policy. And I guess this question would be directed, Madam Chair, to Ms. Maroney. The question that was posed to me, and I didn't know the answer, was that relative to the new rental rates that we're going to be voting on this evening, the question was raised regarding facility usage fees for advisory committees and PTOs and what have you. The example was CPAC and other advisory committees. If they were to use the facility for a fundraiser or what have you, would they be subject to these same rates, or do we make an exception for these types of advisory groups, PTOs, things of that nature?
I believe past practice has been that we made an exception, but I need to look back on that. If you could let me report back to you on that. I'm just trying to think of a recent event where I've seen some funding come in on that.
Yeah, we'll look at that.
Nothing comes to mind.
We'll look at that. I'll share with you, Attorney Gleason, that my experience in my previous school systems is that those organizations that had a direct tie to the school system in that way, we did not. But we'll check past practice in the school district.
Thank you, and my neighbor thanks you as well. So thank you.
Any other comments? All right, let's take the vote. Mary?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Joe?
Yeah.
Sharon?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes. Sorry, yeah. Yes? Is anybody hearing me or?
I heard you, Amy.
Okay.
Brett?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
I think I got everybody. Okay. Motion passes. Fantastic. All right, let's move over now to our subcommittee reports. Oh, okay. Thanks, Mike. Mike or Rich or Brett, would you like to report out for budget and warrant for Steve? Is there a report?
As secretary, I'll chime in. We haven't met since our last meeting, so I don't believe there's any update.
Got it. Communication.
We have two ways to unmute and it's causing confusion, so sorry. We meet on Thursday. We are going to be continuing work on a survey that we are trying to put together. At our last meeting, we worked out the purpose of the survey. And we are also going to revisit our working recommendation that we've been tossing around for having office hours for school committee members as a way to offer additional opportunities for engaging with school committee members. And that is the agenda item that I asked you to defer to the next meeting. So we'll have more to report next meeting, next school committee meeting.
Great, thank you. And our school building committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There's not an immense amount to report out this evening, as we all know that we approved the contract with Kessel Booz Associates as our architect for the build project. They are now under contract with the district, and our next meeting is scheduled for January 18th, at which time Kessel Booz Associates and our OPM at Skanska USA will then essentially be driving this project from this point forward. I had a brief conversation with the superintendent earlier this week regarding where we're moving from at this point. And what will happen is that once we get to the 18th, Kessel Booz will be coming in. They will be sort of establishing the next significant points in the timeline of this. One of the things I did want to point out is I think if we looked online, on the website, there was some information regarding the visioning sessions that would be taking place in February. It looks at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent Downing, those are going to be pushed out a little bit to March or April at this point, and at which point the internal visioning sessions are ongoing with the high school. But then once we start bringing in the public, that will be a little bit later on in the spring. Have I got the time frame on that correct, Superintendent Downing?
Yeah, in general terms, we need to finalize that, and it would be, I think, preemptive for me to throw out some of the recommended dates at this time, being that we're meeting Tuesday. But yeah, the time frame is generally right.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that we had been looking at February for the commencement of these, and it looks like at this point, and we'll know more after the 18th, that those sessions where the public begins to have their say in this particular project will be pushed out a little bit at this point.
That's right, because there's an order of operations that needs to happen to get to those points.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great, thanks, Joe. Over to personnel, and that is me. So we have not met since our last school committee meeting. We meet again on January 26th. And just a little bit of give you a peek at what we're looking at. Our next meeting, we will be discussing salary ranges for our administrative team. I know that that is something that we brought up last year when we were hiring our principal and our superintendent. So that is on the near horizon for our subcommittee to then bring to the larger committee.
Madam Chair, am I allowed to follow up?
Of course.
I have those documents for you that you requested from Ms. Stoika. So
fantastic. Okay. Policy.
Yes, policy did meet earlier this month, and we really focused on those two policies that we were bringing forward tonight for the first reading. We'll meet again on the 31st to review those again and clean them up and touch base on a couple other pieces that we're working on, but we'll bring forward another time.
Thanks very much, Karen. And to Rich for our audit advisory.
I am happy to announce that we have another member, so we now have a quorum to have a meeting. So we will have a meeting in the near future to approve our minutes from last winter, and the final member is working on getting appointed with their Board of Selectmen. So
awesome, thanks, Rich. Drj, Sharon, is there anything else that you wanted to add? I know we talked a lot tonight.
Yeah, you've had a lot of Drj tonight. The only other update is that Laurie did share with me that they have met with Superintendent Downing and also had worked with a couple of people involved in planning of the Professional Development Day in March. I'm not sure, Todd, if you were one of those people or not. They're also looking forward to getting their hands onto that feedback that we had provided around equity within our subcommittees and hoping to provide us with some resources around that. So they are busy.
So grateful to them. Over to Mary with the RAAAC.
Our AAAC met on January 5th and made a major impact in terms of going through the regional agreement. And it looks as though we will be able to complete the AAAC will be able to complete the review the next meeting, which is January 19th, which superintendent and perhaps our chairperson, the school committee may very well be with us at that meeting. So we've extended the meeting time to be able to have enough time to complete the work. And that's it.
Great work, Mary. Really an enormous undertaking. We're so grateful to you. Yeah, big round of applause there. CPAC liaison. Go ahead, Brett.
Oh, CPAC has a virtual meeting tomorrow night discussing the college search. They have a s'mores social on Saturday, and then on the 27th, they are doing another presentation virtually for discussing issues with an advocate. Anybody's interested, you can find the links to register on the district website. That's all I got.
Awesome. Thanks, Brett. That's great. Guys, items for next agenda as we wrap up our meeting here. If you don't mind, I would love to share the calendar here for you. So January is a busy, busy month. You can see on the 22nd, obviously, we have the budget workshop. We will be meeting at 8 o'clock virtually. Alita will send out those materials for us. We also have an executive session planned. And then you guys can read. Hopefully Mary is going to bring our AAAC's recommendations to us the first round anyway. Anything else that you all want me to add? And I cannot see your hands, so please just jump in.
Leah, can you scroll up too to see what's in the following months?
February, yeah. There's already a little bit of talk for our AAAC needing a pop-up meeting in February just to meet our town warrant deadlines. So just keep that in mind. You want me to add? Amy, I'll be sure to move those items that were tabled to future agendas. All right, I don't think everybody's good. So that brings us to a motion to adjourn. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh, Rich beat you to it, but Mary, would you like to second?
I would like to second that. Thank you.
Fantastic. So Mary, what say you?
Yes.
I say yes. Joe?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Amy?
Yeah.
Mike?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
And Karen?
Yes.
Meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everybody.